Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Raised on the Farm podcast, where everything is on the table.
All right. Welcome to Raised on the Farm podcast, everybody. It's good to be back. We've got I would call him a special guest. Of course, all of our guests are special, but we've got Jake Parker from the North Carolina Farm Bureau with us today, and looking forward to having a good conversation. Tell me something good, Jake. What's good today in Jake's world?
What's good today is the school year is about to end for my daughters. I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they are wrapping up the school year. So we're starting to get ready for summer. The good news in that is I don't have to take my middle schooler to school at 7-something in the morning. So I get a little bit more time to ease into my morning. So that's nice.
Yeah.
And if you know me, I'm not a morning person, so that's why it's good. Yeah.
How about you, Marissa? What's good in your world today?
I just celebrated 8 years of marriage with Garrett yesterday,
Very
so
cool.
that's my good.
That's awesome.
Happy anniversary. Yeah. Time
What about you,
flies.
Chad?
Yeah, well, my daughter's graduating high school this year, and we have been to multiple awards ceremonies and graduation ceremonies, and it's bittersweet, but she's ready for a new challenge, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds for her.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Cool deal. Well, Jake, let's hear about you, buddy. I want to know. I want to know who Jake Parker is. Maybe start from childhood, from the Parker household, and how you grew up, and let's get going.
Sure. So I grew up in, believe it or not, Chapel Hill, which always gets a rise out of people in the agriculture industry. Most of them are state fans that always kind of look at you funny, but it was a great place to grow up. We weren't in Chapel Hill proper. We were in the southern part of Orange County heading towards Chatham, so it was fairly rural at that time. But it was a great place to grow up and had good experiences there. Went to Appalachian State for my undergrad degree and was a political science major. I then decided I wanted to take over the world and went to work on Capitol Hill for former Congressman Bob Etheridge. And did that for about 4 years, and then came back to Raleigh, or back to North Carolina, and worked in Bob's district office for about a year, but missed the policy part of Washington, D.C., but didn't necessarily miss Washington. I had a great experience there, but it's wasn't where I wanted to end up long-term in life. Mm-hmm. So I did that for about a year, and then Farm Bureau had an opening for their national legislative director position. If you all know Linda Andrews, she's currently in that role for us. And so I did that role for 6 years. And while I was doing that, I got married, went to law school, did that at night for 4 years. And my wife and I, she actually went to NC State. She got a MPA degree at the same time. And we kind of figured out after law school was over, we kind of reintroduced ourselves to each other because we didn't see much of each other for about 4 years while I was in law school.
Wow.
But so from there, I ended up clerking for 2 years at the North Carolina Supreme Court. I had a great opportunity. He was an associate justice of the court at the time, but former Chief Justice Mark Martin, who's now the dean of the law school at High Point University. And I struck up a relationship through law school, and he offered me an opportunity to be one of his law clerks. And so I took the significant pay cut and went into state service for a couple years. And it was one of the best experiences, y'all, that you can have as a young lawyer, is to get that clerkship. They don't teach you everything about the law in law school. And when you're in the Supreme Court chambers, you have time to think, you have time to read, you have time to write about North Carolina law, and that was a really valuable experience. Then after that, I clerked for one additional year at the court for Barbara Jackson, who was an associate justice on the Supreme Court for a while. And so I got to work with her. She was great as a judge as well. And then in 2012, Larry Wooten recruited me back to Farm Bureau. For those of you who know him, he's a hard person to say no to. He asked me to come back and lead the state legislative program. And I had always promised myself I would not become a state lobbyist because I didn't like, at least the impression I had of how the General Assembly functioned. And it was a little bit like, it wasn't as formal and nice as Congress, right? So not nice, that's not the right word. It wasn't as formal and dignified as working on Capitol Hill. When I got into it, I absolutely loved it. You can actually accomplish things in the General Assembly. It's Congress is so dysfunctional. I won't take up too much of your time on my soapbox here, but it's so hard to pass anything up there nowadays. And at the General Assembly, you can work on bills and pass things and do some good work, which we did over the next 6 years that I was the lead lobbyist with Paul Sherman, passing right to farm revisions and tax reform provisions that protected farmers, and just a slew of other pieces of legislation, the Property Protection Act. Those kind of things were big wins for us. Obviously, Property Protection Act was later declared unconstitutional by the Fourth Circuit, which I think is a wrong decision. But we did a lot there, and certainly for the swine industry in the state, accomplished a lot of things in partnership with the Pork Council. So that was a great experience. And then in 2018, Julian Philpott, who was our longtime general counsel, retired after 30 years in this seat, and Mr. Wooten offered me the opportunity to become Secretary and General Counsel of the North Carolina Farm Bureau. And again, I couldn't tell him no. So I've been in this role for 8 years now, and it is I know, Chad, you and I share a similar faith background. It is a blessing to be a part of an organization that does so much great work for people who work in a profession and industry that I never would have imagined being a part of back when I was growing up in Chapel Hill. So I hope I did okay. That's the quick story. I do a bunch of other stuff too, following a middle schooler, a rising middle schooler, and one of them is a pretty accomplished soccer player. So we spend a lot of time traveling around the state, standing outside of soccer fields, yelling at officials. But it's been a good ride.
Yeah, tell us more about your kids and your wife, Stephanie, Jake.
So my wife, believe it or not, is a Baptist pastor, and so she's a preacher and also children and families pastor at First Baptist Clayton, and that was her home church. So that's been an interesting experience, transitioning from, she worked at NC State for a while for Chancellor Randy Woodson. She was a speechwriter. And then went to be a stay-at-home mom for a little while, and then went into the ministry. And so that was not on the how do you say that? That was not on the bingo card when we started dating and got married. But it's an experience being the supporter of somebody who does what she does and the people she cares for. Daughters, like I said, middle schooler, rising 8th grader, rising 6th grader, and one plays volleyball, the other plays soccer, and they're both smart like their mom, and they're awesome. So
they look like their mom too.
That's a big thing for sure. Yep.
Well, tell us. I'm interested in your faith journey, Jake, and I guess your wife's too. I mean, obviously becoming a pastor—that's a big decision. But you guys were faithful before you become married, or how's that?
Yeah, we both grew up in churches, and my parents were very, very active. Hers were very active, so it's always been a part of our lives. Something that's important to us and grounds us. Not something. The pastor story is funny. Our friend Ray Starling likes to joke. We have the dark and the light in our house. The pastor and the lawyer. But it's important to what we do, and something that grounds us. So yeah.
Now, how did you and Stephanie meet?
Wow, we're deep here.
We're digging.
She doesn't know we're doing this, so she may have to clue her in that she may be listening to this. We actually met while I was working for Congressman Etheridge. Her family was very involved in local politics there in Johnston County, and knew the congressman. So I'd run into her several times when she was, in and around the district. And just one day, I ran into her, and I thought, and she was much younger when we were first knowing each other. So it was nothing weird going on. She was in high school, was very active in her SGA and those type of things. And so that's how I first met her, hey, how you doing? Right. That kind of thing. And about it. Saw her about 5 years later at an event and thought, wow, she's grown up. And So I asked her out. She said yes eventually, and the rest is kind of history. It's been quite a journey over 20 years. So
Yeah,
Wow.
that's awesome.
yeah.
Now, how did you went to undergrad for poli-sci? How did you always have an interest in politics? Like, how did that happen?
Well, I first, growing up in Chapel Hill, I wanted to play basketball for Dean Smith, but I was 5'8", and I could shoot the ball, I could play a little defense and pass, but I couldn't do much else. And then I wanted to become a sports broadcaster, do the ESPN stuff and those kind of things. And that's what I set off to do when I went to Appalachian. They have a very good communications department there, did at the time. And then I got into a political science class, your first year kind of thing. And I was talking about how the political system didn't work for us one day in class, and our professor said, "Well, you could be a congressman someday, you know that?" And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I could be." And so next thing I know, I jumped all into politics and all that kind of stuff, and it's just kind of always stuck. I've always been interested in it, especially when government functions in the right way for people. It really is. I mean, again, I'm not going to get on the soapbox, but it really is about serving people and taking care of one another. And you have to make some really hard decisions. And there is some realities that go with it that are, it's combated on purpose, right? Our founders created this give and take process in our government, and that's part of the public debate that's supposed to go on in your legislature and the Congress. I value all those things. I think they're really important to making this democracy work. And it's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be always everybody gets what they want. But there's some real value there that I bought into early. I guess I'm a just true believer in that respect.
Yeah. You said you clerked for, was it Judge Martin?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Justice Martin.
Yeah.
Mark Martin.
Tell me what clerking means. I mean, you give me the lowdown there. I know it was important to you.
Yeah. So, obviously we have state judges, and these are appellate court judges, not your trial court judges. They typically don't have clerks. But my job was to help Justice Martin and Justice Jackson work through the cases that came before them. And so you would have case petitions that come in that the Supreme Court takes. It's like the U.S. Supreme Court. It does not have mandatory jurisdiction except for a couple of matters, say cases from the business court. So the court is constantly looking at cases that are coming up from the Court of Appeals and the trial courts and determining which cases it wants to take and which it doesn't. And so the clerks do a lot of that work, working through what's coming up, what are the major issues, how is the law developing in this area or that area, and then helping. And so we do a lot of that work advising the justice on, we think, we call them JM, we think you ought to do this for Justice Martin. JM, we think this is a good case to take. And he'd go, nah, it's not because of this, this, and this. And there was always that learning process. It's a little bit of a mentoring process that you get to go through. But we'd also help out with drafting opinions and preparing the judges or the justice for their oral arguments, things like that. So, like I said, it's a lot of reading, a lot of thinking about the law and developing your own kind of view of how the law works and how it should work. You get to see really good advocates and really bad advocates, and you get to read really good writing and really bad writing. And so it was a very formative experience for me, but one that I value very much. If I could go back and be a clerk and get paid what I would do today, I'd do it in a heartbeat, because it's a lot of intriguing, interesting work, but I didn't have to put my name on anything because it was always my justice who would have their name on it. So I could make mistakes kind of quietly, if you would.
Yeah, it sounds like a good foundation for where you are now.
Yeah, the best. I would not be here where I am and able to do the things I do if it hadn't been for that experience.
Yeah.
Now, this journey that has led you to where you are, how intentional was it? Was it just kind of fell in your lap and then you just went with it? Or was it very strategic in preparing you for where you are?
I always like to think it was strategic, but it really, at the end of the day, it's a lot of who you know when you know them and those kind of things. So, the opportunities I've had have been based on relationships and people who have been willing to help me along in my journey. And So yeah, I mean, I had a general idea, but if you had asked me 20 years ago, well, 20 years ago, I'd have been at Farm Bureau by this point. If you'd asked me 25 years ago when I was still at Appalachian, would I be the general counsel at North Carolina Farm Bureau, the state's largest general farm organization? I told you you're crazy. It never would have been something that crossed my mind. I always thought I'd have been one of those career politicians everybody talks trash about. So, you know, who knows?
Yeah. It's interesting because I guess most folks think of Farm Bureau as an insurance company, whereas I hardly ever think of it as an insurance company. It's always about advocacy, right?
Yeah. It's a fascinating organization to be a part of. And as general counsel, I'm like President Harding. I kind of touch every piece of the organization as an officer. So we, as you guys know, were founded as an advocacy organization for farmers in 1936 in Pitt County. That was where the first county farm bureau developed, and several county farm bureaus started building out from there into the late 1960s. Out in the mountains. Those were the last kind of counties to come into the Federation. And so we do that. That's our primary thing. Every day we wake up serving those members and work for those members who are farming. But we also, and then in 1953, the leadership of the organization noticed farmers were having a hard time getting insurance products and financial services. And so they created, I don't know where the idea came from, to be honest with you, but they created a mutual insurance company to solve that problem. And they kind of pooled their money together and built what is now the third largest property casualty insurance company in the state. We write only insurance products in North Carolina. We don't write in any other state, but we compete with all those national folks who you see with all their fancy ads and all those things. We believe in serving people member to member, and in those county offices all over the state. So it's an interesting dynamic. On one hand, even in this day, I've been working on. One minute I'm working on an advocacy issue, the next minute I'm working on an insurance issue, and it's just kind of the way it goes. But we have a great team here, and it's really a great company to work for. But yeah, so we do a little bit of everything in those regards. But we provide property casualty insurance to anybody in North Carolina who's willing to pay $25 to be a member of that advocacy organization. And for the most part, people are willing to do it because I think they support agriculture. Some of them probably just think we're the best deal around, and so they just, what's another $25? But I do think a lot of people, once they understand what we're about, really do support family farmers, and those are the people we represent, as you guys know, across the state. I like to say, the old saying is from Murphy to Manio, right? It's every farm type, every farm size, and it's a really big tent, as the saying goes here at Farm Bureau. We try to represent all of them as best we can.
Yeah, for sure. You guys do a good job. Let's talk about the legal foundation, North Carolina Farm Bureau Legal Foundation. I know it was established in 1983, but give us a little history on or background on why it was established, Jake.
Yeah, Chad, it's really interesting. The folks who've been a part of Farm Bureau over the years have always had foresight back to 1936, right? Creating this advocacy organization for farmers. And in 53, they create a mutual insurance company. And so in the 80s, they created a couple of entities. One is our political action committee, which helps support those candidates who are running for state and federal office that consider Farm Bureau and agriculture policy positions when they're legislating, I guess that's the right word. But also they created, as you noted, Chad, the Legal Foundation. And it is an entity that has evolved over time. When it was first put together, the entity just made contributions or donations to law firms that were representing farmers in important cases. And so at first, there was a case out in Bertie County dealing with present use value, which is, as you guys know, a huge issue for our farmers to make sure we have that entity and that it works well, and that it's a viable way for farmers to deal with their property taxes. And so that's how it worked for probably the next 10 to 15 years. We would just get a request, and you'd ship out some money to the law firm, and they put litigate the case. We wouldn't obviously pay for all the fees, but we'd pay a good chunk of it so that the farmer could stay in the case. And then in the 90s, we started getting involved in more and more cases as a friend of the court. So we would write friend of the court briefs, or we would provide background support to lawyers who were litigating cases. And then that continued, that trend went until about 2015, 2016. We started getting heavily involved in defending legislation that the General Assembly had passed. And so the Property Protection Act, there were revisions to the state's labor laws as it relates to agricultural workers, where our membership took a policy position that farmers shouldn't be the treasurers for farm labor unions. And if a farm worker wants to pay their own union dues out of their paycheck, they can do it. But the farmer shouldn't be the person that has to make that transaction happen. And so the General Assembly passed a bill that dealt with that issue, and the farmer worker union, as I would have done if I was their counsel, they sued challenging that. So we helped defend that law along with the state. So we had this run of about 7-8 years where we were litigating those cases in defense of state legislation that passed. And then in 2019, we brought our own litigation against the state in the general permits case, which was really important to the state's swine industry. We might talk about that later. And then in 2024, the board of directors authorized us to change the legal foundation into what's called a public interest law firm. And so now we can represent individual farmers in cases that have significant impact on the state. Not a routine, I need a will, or I'm upset with my neighbor, or can you help me with this accident that occurred on the farm and I need insurance, right? That's not what the legal foundation does. We do important cases that are going to interpret state law and that will have an impact in positive, we hope, for agriculture across the state. So we have several of those we're working on at the moment. And that's really the work I like doing. The insurance stuff is great. They're great people there, but it's not my favorite. We have a very talented lawyer on staff, Megan Cook, who handles the insurance stuff on a day-to-day basis. And so I get to do the fun stuff, which is writing briefs to the Supreme Court and arguing cases in court on behalf of farmers. So that's been an adventure. But yeah, it's a crazy evolution if you think about it. Almost 43 years ago, the founders of that entity put it together, and I don't think they ever would have thought it'd be what it is today.
Yeah. And so you come on board in 2012. So that was kind of at the end of when they were just funding different law firms to help farmers, and made that transition into the legal foundation. So you've kind of seen a lot of change at the Farm Bureau in reference to that, I guess.
Yeah, it's been one of the things when I came in. Obviously, I was focused on the legislative side of things, but I came from that North Carolina Supreme Court background, and I had begun to see how often the General Assembly would pass bills, whether you like them or not. This is a trend that has been developing. A bill passes, and then the folks who opposed it will sue and challenge it in court. And I'll be just blunt with you. If we end up in a situation where the General Assembly is passing bills that hurt farmers, doggone better believe we're going to bring lawsuits on behalf of our farmers. It's just the way we are in society, whether you like it or not. So you got to play with the rules that you have in front of you, or the rules of the game, if it were, or as it were. So we saw that happening, and Julian Philpott, like I said, one of my mentors and the person who had the seat before me, was very open to that type of work. And President Wooten and our board of directors and Sean Harding have embraced it, especially Sean, because he sees the trend and understands what's happening. And so they've given me a lot of freedom and flexibility to be innovative in that space, and I hope we can make it sustainable for the long term.
Yeah, for sure. As I was thinking about our podcast today, I've known Jake for a while, and I know he's worked on the hog nuisance litigation, Senate Bill 711 and House Bill 467, right to farm. That was 2018, 17, I think.
Yep.
The challenge to the 3 permit conditions that we talked about, and I think you may have done some work on Proposition 12 too, amicus briefs there. But I guess my question, Jake, is I'd love to just know how I mean, give us a rundown on how you tackle some of that work. Like a lot of these issues, I guess you know about them as they're like we're leading up to them. Like Proposition 12, we knew there was a ballot initiative coming, and then it passes, it becomes law. So we're working in front of it. You're working behind it. But maybe just kind of give me from once the board, and I guess you got a board that decides what cases you'll hear, but
Well,
just kind of walk me through
yeah.
that process, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. We monitor myself and our team here. We monitor a lot of stuff that's happening
Mm-hmm.
across the country, litigation all over the place, and we're looking for those issues, of course, grounded by Farm Bureau policy. We're not going to stray from if our voting delegates haven't taken a position on a particular issue or given us authority to work on a particular agricultural policy matter. We're not going to it is less likely that we'll get involved unless it was a major, burgeoning kind of issue. So we're always scanning, always looking for what's the new thing or what's an important case. And we've got, this is going to sound way more sophisticated than it is, but we've got people all over the country we talk to. I'm just daily texting, calling, just friends all over the place that do this kind of work. And so we're all kind of coordinating. Sometimes I wish we were coordinating more than we do, but so we keep up with a lot. And then when we identify a case, let's say the Prop 12, obviously that was going to be an issue, and there was going to be litigation there. And American Farm Bureau and National Pork Producers Council, as they should have in that particular case, took the lead because it was a national issue, and they filed a lawsuit in California challenging Prop 12 as a violation of the United States Commerce Clause, or the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution. My team here, if they listen to this, will be thrilled to know that I'm going to say the words dormant Commerce Clause, right? Which is a legal concept that we don't have time to get into today. But that issue popped up, and then as we watched the case move through the appellate courts and it got to the U.S. Supreme Court, we had an opportunity to write a friend of the court brief to the court. And that's really important at that higher up appellate level, at the North Carolina Supreme Court, North Carolina Court of Appeals, Fourth Circuit. Those friend of the court briefs can give a lot of value to the court. And so we coordinated a group of several states and other allied organizations to write a brief telling the court why that case is going to be important to North Carolina agriculture and agriculture in states, right? It's a little bit different angle than what the primary parties in the case were making. So we're looking at cases, we're thinking about them, we're reading case law, statutes all the time, and just trying to find a way to and we're watching what the courts do. We watch what the Supreme Court does. We watch what the North Carolina Supreme Court does. We read cases that we don't even think have anything to do with agriculture that may be important down the line. So we're always learning and gathering information. I think I was at an event earlier today, the swearing in of a friend of mine who became an ALJ, an administrative law judge today. And the lawyer we were talking to at the event was making a joke about he had practiced for 50 years. And somebody said, well, you've had a lot of practice. The idea is you're practicing law, you're always learning and growing, and trying to figure out better ways to do things. And he said, I don't do as much practicing as I used to. But the idea is Chad try to keep up with everything that's happening. And there are a lot of cases we don't take. There are plenty of cases where we will sit down and talk with the people who are involved or read the case law and go, we might lose that one. We'll probably stay out of that. Or that's not really in the realm of Farm Bureau policy, or the plaintiff isn't a very nice person. So you have to pick and choose those things wisely. But there's a lot that goes into it. I like to think that we have a decent idea of where we're going and what cases are important and what we want to get involved in.
It certainly sounds exciting. Is exciting the right word?
For a legal nerd, yes, it's exciting. For the normal everyday, and it is not lost on me that I live in a world that is different than a lot of people. I think about things in the law that probably most everyday people will go, what are you doing? But it's like anybody else who's engaged in what they do and cares about what the work they do. I guess you have plumbers who think about, well, hey, we could do it this way, right, and make a better result for the client we're serving, right? I think everybody who really cares and is passionate about their work does that. So yeah, I would call it exciting, but there is a lot of grind that goes to it, right? There's like last night, we're working on an amicus brief in a case. I can't disclose it yet because we haven't filed it, but we're working on an amicus brief in a very important case in the state Supreme Court, and I was up till 11:30 working on research and reading, and I enjoy it. Farmers are worth the members we serve are worth the time. I do it after the kids are like I try to get the kids to bed and that kind of thing, right? Try to be present with them in those times when I can be. But there's a lot of just working and reading and thinking and writing that people don't see. And everybody likes to think, oh, you get up and you get to argue a case in court, and that would be exciting, and it is. It is a rush, but there's a lot of prep that goes into it, and a lot of time and effort, and a lot of mistakes happen along the way. If you're reading something, that's not a good argument. We're gonna have to change that and fix that. So there's a lot of testing yourself and really, really wrestling with the ideas you have and trying to get to a solution that's reasonable. So. But yeah, I think it's exciting, but most people will be like, gosh, this is boring. And
hey, as long as you think it's exciting.
Yeah. Because
now,
really, go ahead, Marissa.
I was just going to say, can you talk a little bit about how this agriculture pocket is different than, say, other industries or what you've seen before, dealt with before?
Yeah, in some respects, agriculture law, I think that's what you're getting at, is just this, how is agriculture different in the law? And in some respects it is, and in some respects it's not. In some cases, if you're forming an LLC to protect yourself against liability and get tax benefits because you're going to put in a bunch of hog barns, that's just straight business law. You need to have a good succession plan, right? And you need an estate plan for all the legal. Farms are complex business operations. They're family farms, and that doesn't make them corporate or whatever those messages are. But they are complicated entities, just like any other business you have. If you have a small family business, there's assets involved. There's all of that stuff. So you need estate planning people to help you think through that. You need to have good contracts and employee handbooks, right? All of those things are basic business law things that you would have. What makes agriculture different is in the policy realm. There are a lot of exemptions and exceptions for agriculture than there are state law and our federal law. And knowing what the present use value program is really important. And if you're a tax lawyer or you're a local, small town lawyer, and you don't know what that program is, and a farmer comes in and talks to you about their acquiring property somewhere, and you don't know that there's a 3-year rollback, right, for acquiring property, or how you get the property that you just bought enrolled into your PUV program. Those kind of specialty things, Marissa, make agricultural law a little different. And so it's really the exceptions to the general rules that make ag important. Then you have things like right to farm, which it protects farmers against nuisance lawsuits. Probably behind present use value, I'd say that's probably one of the most important state statutes we have in the agriculture context. And so every state has one. They're all a little different, and knowing those dynamics is helpful and valuable. So it's things like that set agriculture apart a little bit. But so you just have to learn it and experience it, and we find new things all the time that make agriculture a little bit different.
That's really cool. I want to ask you on the amicus briefs. Who's reading those? So it's really another judge is reading those, and you're trying to convince him of your point of view, right? That's the purpose behind that.
Yeah, a good amicus brief, and this is it's nerd time, right?
I'm nerding with you.
You have two parties. You have two parties in a case. Let's say it's a farmer and the State Department of Environmental Quality, right? The North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. and you got a brief, you're in front of a judge, and you're trying to tell the judge, the parties are trying to make their arguments on specific areas in the case that are really important. A good friend of the court brief or amicus brief raises something new for the judge to consider or expands on something. In this case, we'd be supporting the farmer. Supports the farmer in some way that they don't have time to talk about, or that is important but isn't really their primary argument. And so we file them frequently just to educate the court about agriculture law or how this particular case might impact farmers down the line. And so, you try to write something that's unique that the court will read because they don't have to read it. The only pleadings they have, the only papers they have to read, or they don't have to read anything technically, but they should be reading the parties' briefs, right? Because that's what's actually in front of them. So a friend of the court brief has got to be compelling enough for you to spend the extra 15, 20, 30 minutes. Probably if you're reading really fast, 15, 20 minutes just to read it. But if you're really going to study it, the next 30, 45 minutes, you've got to give them something that's worth reading. And something that they would actually digest and understand. So we take that very seriously on which cases we want to get involved in and what are we going to say to the court. We get questions all the time. Hey, would you file a friend of the court brief? Well, yeah, what do you want us to say? Oh, well, if they say the basic same things that they're arguing, then there's no point in us getting involved. So we try to, and sometimes there are cases like, hey, the parties have got this. There's nothing for us really to add. And so we'll stick. But generally, we try to pick and choose our cases, Chad, so that we've got something to say. Otherwise, we're wasting everybody's time, and then you make judges mad, and that's the last thing you want. You don't want an annoyed judge.
Yeah. Well, I've said this several times recently, and I really mean it. But I feel like agriculture is more unified than it's ever been. I feel like when I see the Farm Bureau working together with the Pork Council and all the other trade associations, it really gives me a lot of hope for the future. So talk to me a little bit about those relationships and the ag partnership, even us, NC Farm Families, all working together for a same goal, maybe in different lanes. But let's just talk about those partnerships a little bit.
Yeah, they're crucial. And I think, Chad, you may have heard this before. I don't know, Marissa, in your experiences, you've run into this as well. I don't think we realize how good we have it here. I think from what President Harding will tell us when he comes back from events or other places in the country, we really do have something unique where we do work largely together on a lot of issues. And I think some of that comes out of trust. A lot of us have known each other for a really long time. I was on the phone with somebody you guys know well, Angie Mayer, long-time lobbyist for Pork Council now with dairy producers. She's one of my dear friends. And we had an issue we needed to talk about. I mean, Angie and I have been through a lot together and built up a lot of trust. And it's at the point where, Angie can be pretty direct.
Yeah. That's what we appreciate about her.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. There's that trust. There's that built up relationship that helps you work through the disagreements on policy. And then you can get to a place of common ground. And I'm picking on her, but she's a great example of that. But also I think we at Farm Bureau also understand we're the general farm organization. We see the state broader, but we also respect the fact that these other commodity associations have a membership and they have issues that they're working on too. And so we often will give ground a little bit and provide a supporting role. There are plenty of situations where we'll have issues that come up that is, we do a lot with the Shellfish Growers Association and industry, oyster farmers, clams, and they'll have very specific issues that are theirs to fight on, and we will back them up and help them do that, but not take over for them. And so I think an understanding of where is that line and where is that role is really important. But I also think, I think we've learned over the years it's really important for us to stick together, because the General Assembly, although they do really great work, I think for the most part in the agriculture space, very few of them have an agriculture background.
Yeah, sure.
And if you don't go in unified or at least supportive of each other in terms of, I understand why Pork Council is taking this particular position, or poultry may be over here on something different, that's fine. We may not necessarily support that, but we wouldn't oppose it, right? We just let them go do their work. And I'm using that as an example. We recognize that confusion in the building creates bad results. So you want everybody who's working on these issues who's not familiar with agriculture to understand we're all generally in the same space. We're all facing the same challenges. We just produce something a little different. I think that's really healthy, and it's a credit to Commissioner Troxler, Larry Wooten, President Harding, Roy Lee, Deborah Johnson. Everybody who's been in those roles over the years. And Brian Glinson at Cattlemen, and just the others in the commodity associations, we've all kind of understood we got to work together, otherwise we're going to get some results we don't like. It's worked. I don't know how else to say it, but it's worked. But there are a lot of back end conversations that are not a lot of fun, and you just have to kind of work through it and then get to a common point and come out. So
yeah.
Well, it's amazing to me. I mean, when you compare different states, right? North Carolina is one of the most diverse, and then individual farmers, I think, are just diverse in what they produce in comparison to others. So it amazes me, like, just take you guys, for example, what you have to cover and know and be able to support, right? Like, it's not just you have one lane that you're supporting. You're supporting, like you said, the shellfish, but then you jump over and you're in the mountains with the Christmas trees, and in the middle with the pigs. It's just that's a lot of knowledge and relationships to manage and hold.
And that goes to, I think, again back to the vision of Farm Bureau as an organization and what our leadership has allowed us to do over the years and what they've required of us. They require us to know this stuff. They require us to work together as a team. And inside Farm Bureau, we have a tremendous public policy staff that does excellent work. And we're all talking regularly about issues that come up in their places. But there are plenty of situations where I have to say that, my colleague Keith Larrick, who handles a lot of the animal waste issues, like, Keith, I have no idea what we're talking about here. You're gonna have to educate me on what's going on. So there's a lot of that trust and a lot of that camaraderie that goes on that we work our way through. But it's really a testament to our leadership that they give us the resources to do it. Otherwise, Marissa, to your point, it'd be really hard to keep up with it. There are, for example, there are state farm bureaus that are the smallest county farm bureau, I won't out them, in North Carolina, has about just under 1,000 members. There are state farm bureaus that don't have 1,000 members, period. And so it would be really challenging if you were in one of those really small, they're mainly in the Northeast, and there's some reasons for that, but they have some smaller, how do they keep up with everything? I don't know. And there probably are some things they miss, not because they're not capable or talented, it's just resource issues. So we've been blessed through the years to have the resources to work on all those different issues.
Yeah, I guess that's a good time to talk about the importance of the farmer's voice. I mean, as a pig farmer, I'm involved with my state association, and I'm letting them know, what's going on my farm, so that information can travel up to you. It's just important for all of us as farmers to be involved more than just on the farm. We got to get involved in our associations for sure.
Yeah, and it's important, especially in the advocacy context, Chad, to keep in mind that the legislator you're dealing with probably does not have much experience in agriculture. If they're not a farmer, they're the Brent Jacksons and the Lisa Barneses and the Carl Gillespies, right? They've got experience 10 times over. But for the regular member, from Johnston County, who doesn't have that agriculture background and maybe represented, Donna White is a good friend, a close friend. She didn't grow up on a farm, but she does respect farmers and wants to hear from them about what are their concerns? How does this work in your industry? And so they're open to hearing that. But some of them, I'm a registered, I like to say I'm a recovering lobbyist because I'm not in the legislative building every day. But we're lobbying all the time. We're interacting with legislators all the time. And sometimes they want to hear from their constituents, right? And they want to hear from people who are actually I like to say, with dirt under their fingernails, and can tell them how it really functions, because I haven't grown anything in my life, and so I don't know. I don't know how it is. I don't know what it's like to have that loan payment and the debt structure, and then trying to make it go, and then you have a drought, and right, like, farmers are the best people to tell that story. And so that's why Farm Bureau, I think, works. These other commodity associations work, is because it gives you a chance to tell that story backed up with people who are following the details of the policy. And I tell our farmer members all the time, we can't make this go without y'all. Like, you've got to be willing to do this and willing to invest your time. Otherwise, it's just Jake, who never grew anything, talking about an agricultural law issue. But when I've got a farmer who's talking about it with me next to a legislator, it matters a lot. I think that's really important in today's environment, where there's so much information, so much access to whatever you want on these things, right? It's hard to shift through what's real, what's not. And so you want to have farmers have to participate in that process. Otherwise, you're going to get drowned out by the opponents of it, or people who just don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. And with AI coming on the scene, I mean, that can be good and bad, right,
Yeah,
Jake?
it's. I had this event that I was at earlier today. I was talking to a Court of Appeals judge who I think a lot of is a friend of mine, and he was talking about. He was in some class recently where they were studying AI, just trying to learn more about it and how it worked and all those kind of things. And he and I were talking about how I've begun to start. I've started using it to help me do research, because I can ask it questions, very specific questions that indicate I know an area of the law, but I don't know where this particular document is, or I want to test this case against or this maybe theory I have against other ideas, and I don't want to spend 5 hours digging through Westlaw trying to find cases. This thing can pop case now. You have to be careful, because it'll create cases that aren't true, and so you've got to read your stuff. It'll hallucinate cases, and judges, appellate advocates get in trouble a lot for citing these cases that don't exist because they're not doing their homework. But if you use it right, it can be a really valuable tool to test. But Chad, to your point, there's a lot of risk in there, and there's a lot of misinformation that it's picked, because it's just grabbing everything it sees on the internet, right? Yeah. And so it's also trying to synthesize, but that's where the human part of it comes into play. It is a tool. It shouldn't replace our thinking and our instincts and those kind of things, but it can be helpful in a lot of cases. But it's got to be used correctly, I think, and that's the part. Figuring out what is correct, what is using it correctly is the trick, right? There's a lot of. But we just have to understand, I think, as an industry, these things are out there. They can be a little scary at first, but I think they're also tools that you can use. So,
I think that's the right word. It's a tool.
Yeah, for sure. Jake, what do you think about farmland preservation? I know we've done a couple of podcasts. We've had Brandon Batten on and Adam Caldwell over in Johnson County, and I tell you, that's a real. I mean, we talk about property rights and farmland preservation. It's a real tough issue.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I wish I had a great answer for how to solve it. And I just don't think there is one. Brandon, actually, I joke with him a lot. He's a farmer from Johnston County. I live in Clayton, and I like to joke with Brandon. I'm part of the problem in Johnston County, because we moved in and built a couple of houses in the area, and moved around on some old farmland. But I think, there are obviously going to be programs and policies. I think one thing that would be really good to get a handle on is, how do we leverage more quickly federal funds? I think that's a big holdup in the state's program, and I think Commissioner Troxler's done an admirable job in raising the issue and securing funding for the General Assembly for that. But there are some procedural headaches that go along with that program that would be nice to work out, and I think mainly they lie at the federal level. I think also farmers being involved in their local county commission decision making and running for office and making it a priority. The reality is that we have a tremendously fast growing state. and people have
Yeah.
got to find places to live. But there has to be some balance, and that's why those local county commissioner races are so important. And zoning decisions are important, making sure you got the right zoning regulations in place that aren't too restrictive on development, but also take account for the fact that there's farmland in the county that you need. And so I think it comes down to communication, and if we can ever figure out, some kind of silver bullet for it, I'd be all for it. But I don't know that a tool exists, unfortunately. And it's a property right. Chad, you mentioned it. Now I'm just freestyling. It's a property rights issue, right? Like there's also that element to it. I own land, and let's say it's a farm, and if my kids don't want to go into farming, and I'm at 70 years old and I want to get out, and I can sell for $5 million.
Oh, I totally get it.
Hard. That's a hard thing to tell somebody to go do, right? And so it's a challenge, but we have to keep talking about it and keep thinking of ways to address it. But I do think those local county commissions are really where the rubber meets the road on this issue. So I would encourage farmers to run for those seats. I know it's hard and there are challenges that come with that, but that's probably the best way to do it. Back to that advocacy part, right?
Yeah. Sure. Well, anything else, Jake? Looking forward on how we can better, fight for agriculture, protect our farms. Anything on the horizon that you see?
Yeah, I think obviously we continue to do what's worked. Advocacy, communicating together, working together in the community. That's worked for 90 years at North Carolina Farm Bureau. We're going into our 90th year or 91st year. And so that's never going to change. As long as you have elected people, imperfect as they are, serving in the General Assembly or in Congress, you've got to be engaged with them as well. You can't just ignore that part of the relationship. I think being innovative, as we've tried to be with the Legal Foundation, is important. You can't continue to do the same thing the same way. Thinking about how do we use, and you guys have done a lot of this work, how do you use social media? How do you engage in places where you may not be comfortable? I think that's a real challenge. Standing across somebody who has a really strong opinion, maybe they're in the Maha movement, to the extent it's a movement, whatever it is, and they're telling you can't use pesticides and that they're bad for you. Well, you've got a different story to tell, right? And that may not be comfortable to have to go head to head with somebody like that, but you got to do it, and you got to do it respectfully, in a way that helps people learn. I think that's important. So I think it's doing the same things we've been doing really well in that advocacy space, but also being willing to innovate and change a little bit of the tactic, if you will.
Yeah. Do you see any skills that you wish more people had or would work on to be a better advocate?
Oh, wow. I wish we had I wish we were placing more emphasis on how our government functions in schools, but not just schools. I think we've missed a generation of people who know how the system functions and what it's about. And I can't lay that entirely on the public school system or even the private school system. I just think as a society, we've gotten a little bit away from those founding principles of we have a democracy. I think democracy, republic, if you want to get really specific about it, after the Constitution, after the Declaration of Independence was adopted, Ben Franklin came out of the hearing room, or not the hearing hall, whatever the hall was where they were doing the Freedom Hall in Philadelphia, and he said, what kind of government did you create? And he said, a republic if you can keep it. And I really think that is right. It takes some responsibility. It takes learning how the system works. It takes being able to build those relationships and understand how this all fits together. The brief we're working on is all about separation of powers and different branches of government and how they all function. I mean, it's basic nerd stuff that I love as a lawyer. But I don't think a lot of people today are really worried about that. And I think we've gotten away from government being a service-oriented enterprise. And I think we're I could go on and on and on. But I do think those are important. Just the basic civics of how government works would be really helpful, I think, for the country and for how we would do things a little bit better.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I was in civics class and I don't know where I was at. I must not have been paying attention, but it wasn't until I got involved in like Pork Leadership Institute, and when we traveled to DC and they taught us about government and just being involved in the associations and whatnot, that I really learned about how government works.
Mhm.
And that was much later in life. So, I mean, I could have learned a lot earlier.
Yeah. Well, maybe this analogy works. I'm making this up on the fly. I said earlier, my youngest daughter plays club soccer. We travel all over the place, and I love it. And I didn't know the first thing about soccer. I don't know anything about it. But the more I watch her play, the more I'm engaged with it, I learn more and more and more. And I learned a little bit more about the back end of how the clubs work and those kind of things. So I think it's also taking time to learn something new. Now I'm kind of forced to, because it's kind of there, and we're going to go to Wilmington and play 4 games in 98-degree heat, and that's what we're going to do. But I think the analogy works in some respects because it's something new. I've always kind of known a little bit about it, but I had to learn. I'm still learning. I have to learn more. But I think you're right, Chad, that if it's beyond, we can't rest it all on public schools. And maybe the takeaway from this part of our conversation is, for those trade associations, agriculture, commodity associations, we need to be investing a lot in leadership development and spending time on these basic government issues, because we can't count on public schools, private schools, and government to solve it for us. We gotta take some ownership for that. Maybe that's right. I don't know.
That's right. I think you're right on track.
Yeah.
Well, now, Jake, I know you don't geek out on ag law stuff all the time. Surely there's some hobbies or something you do. You play golf. Tell me something that you do that's fun, or you're kind of released.
Yeah, I play golf poorly. Like I said, I watch my daughters play volleyball and soccer. That's a lot of it. I'm a big college basketball fan, so I watch a lot of that during the year. I love reading when I can find time to do it, especially as this is a little bit of your patriotic rah-rah here, but we're going into the 250th anniversary of the United States country. So I got a couple books I want to read that are about the history of the Revolution, the development of the Constitution, which sounds exactly what we've been talking about with respect to what I do anyway, but it's interesting to me. I'm big into the hurricanes right now. I don't know what happened, but this this winter, my family went to a couple games, and my whole family, my wife and my kids, are all hooked on the Canes. So we're watching a lot of hockey. I'm watching more hockey than I did basketball, which is kind of funny for a North Carolina person to be watching us be in the winter sport. But it's a blast. So just finding things like that to do, and really, I don't do it. I'll be honest. This is the full disclosure part. I don't do a great job of separating from the work. Right? It's just always kind of in front of me, and it's something I enjoy doing. So, for me, it's nice to get away from it sometimes. But I'm always thinking about the next case, or the next issue, or the next conversation we got to have about an ag issue, or something like that. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just how I'm wired.
Yeah. Well, Jake, I just want to let you know, really on behalf of all farmers, how much we appreciate all the work you do. I don't think people realize just how much effort you put into it, and not necessarily how much effort, but how much of an impact you've had on our right to farm, our right to operate, our freedom to operate as farmers across this state. And I just really, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for sure.
Very kind. It's as I said at the beginning, it's a service thing. My wife might call it a call. She would call it a calling in the ministry context. I'd call it a calling as well. One that I didn't expect. But I tell our board this all the time. They're worth it. It's one of the things in my We have something along the lines of, we have a lot going on in the legal department this month or this quarter, but y'all are worth it. So I think that the farmer members we work with are just, they're incredible in the things that they do, and they deserve advocates. They're out there taking care of pigs and trying to grow corn and cotton and soybeans and tobacco and sweet potatoes, and they don't have time to mess with the legislature or courts, but they trust us to do that work. I don't take it lightly.
That's right. No matter what, there's a job for you in agriculture. I want folks to know that.
As long as it's not driving some farm equipment or trying to plant something, we'll be okay.
I wish Jan Archer was here to say it, though, because she says it better than anybody.
No, that's right. It takes all of us to get this done.
It does.
It's really a privilege to be with you guys. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Yeah, I appreciate your time.
All right. Well, y'all take care. See you soon.
Okay.
Right, thanks.
DJ.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Raised on the Farm podcast. Remember to subscribe and follow us on Instagram. Have a question or a topic idea? Let us know and join the conversation. We'll see you next time.